Hello, everybody. Happy Monday, December 18th episode of the NBA Front Office Show. Welcome in. Keith, start the countdown. 1 week till Christmas. We're almost there. I'm excited, and we've got a busy day. 'Tis the season. We had a lot going on over the weekend, so tons to break down today in the NBA world. By the way, I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me over on X. I almost said Twitter again, at Trevor_Lane. You can find me on Threads and Instagram at Trevor Lane NBA. Joined by Keith Smith, the man who was smart enough just to make his social handle uniform across platforms at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, how are you doing?
I'm good. And I also did that years and years and years ago. So that was just, just made it easy. I'm not a very smart person, so I need to make it simple for myself to remember. So I just did my name. It's also, it can be hard when you have a very common name to find things that work. So I've learned how to get a little tricky with the naming conventions on things. So yeah, man, we were just talking in the pre-show before we started recording. We didn't take a day off, and yet there's 900 stories that we need to get into, so we should probably just dive right in.
All right, let's do it. Let's start. Well, I mean, it's the Christmas season. If anybody is in the giving mood, Danny Ainge will be accepting gifts in the form of first-round picks, apparently wanting 5 picks, according to Kevin O'Connor, in exchange for Lauri Markanen, looking for a Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert size deal for Markkanen. Now, I know I've seen the reaction already on social media. The eye rolls, the eyes are rolling so far back in everybody's heads, and people are amazed at this. Look, it's this time of year, right? If the Jazz really want to move Lauri Markkanen, that number, that asking price is going to come down. But right now, when teams aren't really ready to make trades yet, you might as well ask for everything. Ask for everything that you can. You can only come down from there. Also, our friendly reminder, not all first-round picks are created equal. Even with those disclaimers, though, there's still got to be a decent amount of sticker shock here, Keith, with 5-ish picks for Lauri Markkanen.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that is the number that's reserved for guys who are the best of the best.
Yeah.
Right. Or have potential to be at that level. And when we start hearing about that for guys who aren't at really that level, that turns into what? Where are we going with this? But it's Danny Ainge. He always is going to drive a very hard bargain. I think the more important takeaway for me is Lauri Markkanen's not untouchable for the Jazz. The Jazz, very clearly, they don't have a single untouchable on their roster. And this is just a good point to, kind of gently remind everyone. There are very few true untouchables in the NBA. The list is far, far smaller than the average fan would like to admit. And no, 5 of them don't all play on whatever your favorite team is, right? It's just not how it works. It's, people label guys untouchable. Now there are guys who will cost a lot more to get than others in that. So in the Markkanen place, yeah, I mean, that seems a little crazy. 5-ish picks or something in that range of picks and players and other stuff. But he was an all-star last year. He's been very good again this year. The team has not been very good. They're not one of the surprise darlings of the league like they were a year ago. They are more in line with where I think we thought they'd be a year ago. It just, last year they kind of snuck up on everybody and caught them by surprise. So I'm not surprised this is out there. And it wouldn't shock me if in a month and a half when we're at the actual trade deadline, if we get the Jazz are trading Lauri Markkanen type move, in part because Lauri Markkanen's salary is not so large that it's very hard to move either. And that also makes things a lot more interesting. He's a guy a lot of contenders could go get because his salary isn't $35-40 million.
Well, and now he's on the record saying, I believe it was yesterday or day before to Sam Amick, saying that he believes in what the Jazz are building for the future. Like he doesn't want to go anywhere. He would prefer to stay with the Utah Jazz. But nonetheless, he's a very tradable contract. And if the Jazz see the opportunity to make the move, we know Danny Ainge will do it. Again, I would be shocked if he gets the 5-ish picks. Now, if it's 5 picks and 2 or 3 of them are not real first-round picks or something, again, that's where we get into the whole not all first-round picks are created equal bit of this. But still, that asking price is high. I'm sure offers are low right now. By the time we get to February 8th, maybe they'll meet in the middle. We'll have to wait and see. But I think you're right. I think the big takeaway, Lauri Markkanen, not untouchable, and maybe another name to monitor out there on the market.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just, I've seen some stuff around, could the Jazz trade Colin Sexton? Could they move Kelly Olynyk? I think other than the guys on the rookie scale deals, I would keep an eye on just about anybody on that roster. We've even
Mhm.
heard John Collins, who they really
We
acquired
just
for
got.
nothing but cap space. I think that was a hey, let's take a shot, and if it works, great. Otherwise, we'll flip him. And just to remind everybody, when Danny Ainge started the rebuild process with the Celtics the second time after the Pierce Garnett
Mhm.
championship years in contention window, he had a season where he made about a trade every 7 to 10 days for about a 2 month period. It was crazy. They made so many trades that year, and that one culminated in our favorite Woj on trade deadline day just tweeting, "Oh God."
He said,
Or
"Good Lord."
good Lord, whatever it was. I knew it was something like that.
That was an
And
all-time great
so
NBA
great.
Twitter moment.
And
when
that
it,
was part of what did that was the Isaiah Thomas trade was like a buzzer beater at the very end of the day, where that ended up being a great trade for the Celtics. But in that
yeah,
window, he like acquired and then traded Jameer
yep.
Nelson and Brandon Wright and all these guys, Austin Rivers. So Danny Ainge loves nothing more than being super active during trade season. So it would not surprise me because they have so many tradable players on very decent contracts that they
Mhm.
wouldn't be looking to move some of those guys around.
A little bit of, I mean, minor breaking news here, but the NBA has invited Mac McClung to defend his dunk contest title. Uh, we've been plenty critical, and we'll get back to the Jazz in just a moment. We've been plenty critical of All-Star Weekend in general, but Mac McClung was the bright spot of All-Star Weekend this last year. So hopefully he does come back and defend the title, because that would add a little bit of excitement to what's been kind of a dull showing in recent All-Star games.
Yeah, I also want to just note, and you're probably going to hear me talk more about some G League guys throughout the course of this week and next, because the G League showcase is going on. It starts tomorrow here in Orlando, and I'll be around the showcase quite a bit, meeting with various people and those kind of things. It's basically kind of Mark Stein has written about this, but others have said it's basically like the NBA version of winter meetings in baseball. Like
Mhm.
everybody will be down here doing this, and a lot of it is they're watching the G League guys, but a lot of it is also talking trades. But in the case of Mac McClung, obviously, like, cool that he's going to get a chance to, go back into the dunk contest and do all that. But Trevor, here's his numbers in the G League this year
Mhm.
so far this season: 25.4 points per game on 46, 36, 83 shooting splits.
Oof.
So really good shooting numbers. And that 36% from three is on 9 attempts per game from downtown. So volume shooter, but also making at a pretty good clip. 4.5 rebounds, 5.9 assists. This is a guy who probably should just be on an NBA roster. He's clearly too good for the G League. Like he's proven that over and over again over the last couple of years. So I'm hoping this turns into let's get a little bit of notoriety that gets him that full roster spot that he really probably should have.
Is he the classic 4A guy that we talk about on here? Do you think that's, or do you think he's graduated from that
I
designation?
I think he could be like a third point guard in the NBA where he's, doesn't play regularly, but if there's a night somebody's out or you're sitting a guy or whatever, he could step in and be fairly capable because just the athleticism is there. He can shoot, he can score. And what's been really exciting this year, he plays for the Magic's G League team. So I've seen him a couple times in person play. They're tasking him with, hey, you got to run the team. Even more than you have in prior years at the G League level, and that's been good to see too. That they're really kind of pushing him. Hey, let's really show that you can run the team as well as score the ball and all those kind of things. So that's been really good to see. So yeah, I think he could be a real NBA guy. I don't think he's going to step into a rotation and then
No.
play 20 minutes a night off the bench or anything, but a guy who once a week you need him to play 15 minutes a night. I think he could do that and hang in there.
We'll see if he can get himself a little bit further onto the map and onto the radar in the dunk contest this year, assuming he accepts the invitation, because I would have to imagine that he will. and that's going to be a foregone conclusion. All right, so the
Yeah,
Jazz
he'll be the
go
favorite,
ahead.
right? So why not just grab some free money if for no other reason, right?
Exactly.
Just
Exactly.
get out there and go do your thing.
Okay, so the Jazz could be looking at making a move with Lauri Markanen in addition to a number of other players. Again, as we get closer to that trade deadline, February 8th, more and more trade stuff's going to come out. We've got more trade stuff to talk about on today's show. But let's get to Draymond Green. So he has started counseling, and the expectation is that he's going to miss at least the next 3 weeks. So now, even though the NBA it's an indefinite suspension, now we kind of have a timeline, sort of. Timelines can be kind of dangerous though, because if he's not ready to come back at that point, then fans get upset and everything when the player's not there. Trust me, we just went through it with Gabe Vincent. Shams Charania reported a week ago that he was going to play today against the Knicks, and now he's still on the injury report saying out, and people are losing their minds. So you got to be careful with timelines. I liked that the NBA used it as an indefinite suspension, but now at least we have a ballpark to know it's not like it's going to be the entire season unless something else happens, but it is going to be a significant chunk of time that Draymond's going to be missing.
Yeah, and that'll mean this will be roughly a month, right?
Yeah.
That he will miss this. He's going to be out for roughly a month, and everybody's got different feelings on, is that too long? Is that too short?
Mm-hmm.
For me, this is the whole idea of the indefinite was show you're making real progress towards that this isn't going to happen again, that you actually are contrite, you're trying to fix things, that you're trying to be a better person. And if that's where this gets towards, I don't think 3 weeks does it. I don't think anybody's gonna say that was it. He solved, anger management issues.
Everything's
in 3
good.
weeks.
Yeah.
But I think if you come back and you don't have another incident the rest of the year, and and then we keep moving forward and making better progress, well, then maybe this is a start to something, and we can all be somewhat hopeful, right? That is where maybe this is going. But yeah, I mean, it's going to take a lot. Like we said, this is not going to be Draymond's back for 10 games, and we're all like, oh man, look at Draymond. What a kinder, gentler soul he is. No, like it's going to have to be get through the rest of this year. Next year, like we're always going to be on watch now for the next thing. And it'll be, for a lot of people, it's going to be an opportunity to say, told you so. People don't change. And for others, there's going to be an opportunity, a week back to claim, yeah, look at, what a better guy. Oh, that was a garbage foul call and he didn't get a technical. I also think it's going to be unfair. Draymond's going to get a technical, and people are going to be like, "Told you, and wouldn't change." And like, guys get technical fouls. That happens. What we can't see is Draymond Green scrapping with another player or taking cheap shots or whatever it is, like he's done in the past. So hopefully this all gets solved and we see him back soon. But only time will tell.
Keith, I'll tell you what you're describing. It is, and people have heard me talk about this on Lakers Nation before. It's probably one of my biggest pet peeves about the social media sports landscape right now is how many posts we see saying something to the effect of everyone else said X, but all along I've been saying Y.
Yeah.
As soon as you have anything that even looks remotely like whatever Y is supported and is an accurate statement. Regardless of what has happened before or after, if you have a guy that goes nuts for 50 points and he's averaging 5 points on the rest of the season, person will say, everybody else said this guy's trash, but I've been a believer the entire time. We're just so eager for that moment to take victory laps because we believe, or we want to make everybody believe, that we've been right all along and everyone else has been wrong. The entire world has been against you, but I was right. We're so eager to create these kind of posts. It's a little bit crazy to me.
And to me, there's more grandstanding the other way when it's, I told you they stink, and you've been telling me that they're good, and I told you that they're terrible. Like for me, I hand up, I've said it a couple times on here and I'll repeat it again. I was not a big believer in the Minnesota Timberwolves this year. I certainly thought they'd be in the postseason mix, but I did pick them as kind of that 11th team in the West that would miss out just because somebody had to out of that group of really good teams. And I wasn't a big believer. If they fall off in the second half of the season and aren't playing as well, I'm not going to be like, see, I told you so. They're not as good as I thought. But people do love that. And I get it. I like to be right too. Don't get me wrong. I would much rather be right than wrong. But yeah, it is weird. And more often than not, it's somebody coming out and saying, I told you so, with
Yep.
nothing to back that. When did you tell me this? Like
Right.
when did you ever say these things? So yeah, it's funny. But yeah, I don't like to grandstand over any individuals fall off or anything like that. I will occasionally be like, yeah, this guy's been showing this. Like if Mac McClung makes a roster and ends up being an NBA guy, we're like, well, we kind of tried to tell you a little bit,
Sure.
there, but that's, yeah, it is funny how that goes.
It,
In today's world, everybody wants to, pat themselves on the back big time.
and you're absolutely right. It's more the negative things than the positive things that people want to say. See, I told you that player was always trash and all
Yep.
this sort of stuff. Anyway, it's one of my least favorite things about the current social media climate that we see. As much as I spend all this time on social media and enjoy it and all that, it's a weird thing. It's almost like it's a form of bragging that I'm like, what happened? Did we not learn things when we were growing up or what? But anyway, Draymond Green. So I hope this works for him. I hope this is the path towards him returning and being a player that you don't have to worry. I mean, I think we're always going to worry to some degree, but hopefully this all works for him. He comes back, and hopefully the Warriors are still hanging in there. I don't know if you saw Steph Curry's 3-point streak got broken.
I did.
Finally
Yeah.
got snapped. He did not make a three, and in fact, he only had 7 points. And I don't remember.
268 games.
There it is. I knew you'd have it.
Yep.
Unreal stuff. But the Warriors maybe in a little bit of trouble. I mean, they're playing around with their starting lineups. They could certainly use Draymond. So I guess the question now becomes, what kind of shape are the Warriors going to be in when he does come back? And I guess this kind of leads you back into the trade deadline too. If you're Golden State, we're talking like mid-January, Draymond comes back, then they got to sort things out real quick and figure out what their plans are going to be before February 8th.
Yeah, I think I am curious because to me, the bigger thing for the Warriors that's kind of hanging out there is, can they play better enough that then you feel good about, we're going to trade a couple of the kids to try to really add a veteran to push this forward.
Extend Clay.
Yeah, exactly. Do you extend Clay? Do things fall off enough that you're like, you know what? Maybe we need to think about making kind of an unthinkable trade out of one of those kind of core players there. I also think there's a chance Chris Paul, it's the nature of his contract where it's one of those ones that I call pseudo expiring because it is non-guaranteed for next season. Could that be a big trade piece? Either way, right? Do you look at it and say,
sure,
we could trade Chris Paul to get what we need up front or on the wing, and we still feel fine because we've got Steph and we'll have guys like Gary Payton back and other guys, and that we only need to fill 10 minutes a game anyway when it really matters. And so that could be a thing there as well. So yeah, I think for right now, they've won a couple in a row. Steve Kerr's lineup changes have worked. They look good right now with some of the different guys playing some spots. They have effectively swapped out, 2 starters with Draymond going out and then
Wiggins,
Andrew Wiggins going to the bench for Jonathan Kuminga and Brandon Podziemski to get in there. So we're in a spot where it's working, and we'll continue to watch and see where it goes. It's it's still there for the Warriors. It's just the kind of margin for error is way slimmer than it's ever been during this run.
Keith, they lost to the Thunder, the Suns, and the Clippers 3 in a row. Then they beat the Nets, which the Nets can be a tough opponent, but then they beat the Blazers by 4. Then they run into your Celtics tomorrow night.
Yeah.
That could be a difficult matchup for them, especially without Draymond. So we'll see where things go from here.
Of course, the Celtics get them where Steph is coming off maybe the worst game he's played in like a decade.
So he's going to be red hot.
Yeah, I'm sure he's starting a new 3-point streak with probably about 10 made threes tomorrow night. Speaking of, did you see over the weekend Keegan Murray? Holy cow.
What do you have, 47?
47, 12 out of 15
goodness.
from 3. Or 12 out of 13 or something like that. Like he couldn't miss, and some of them were more difficult than others, but still the ball's going in that much. That's absolutely incredible.
And we didn't talk about this either because it was Friday night. Jalen Brunson, speaking of scoring outbursts, 9 of 9 from 3, goes for 50 against the Phoenix Suns. 17 of 23 shooting. overall. That's absolutely unbelievable. He had a better percentage from 3 than he did from the free throw line. Like, that's insane. He was 7 of 9 from the free throw line, 9 of 9 from 3.
So you're saying he should shoot his free throws from further back?
Clearly, that's the solution. Step further back. I think Nick Van Exel did that at one point. Step back, like 2 steps.
Guys have done that. Like who, I can't remember who it was. Remember somebody shot it like off to the
side. Yeah.
Side,
Yep.
for a while there. Yeah, we've seen guys switch hands. Mason Plumlee did the one-hander for a while.
Yep.
I don't know.
All right. Well, let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about the Zach LaVine trade. So Sam Amick of The Athletic talked to Rich Paul, who is obviously Clutch Sports super agent and the agent for Zach LaVine. And Rich Paul basically hammered home the point that, look, yes, everybody tends to think that whenever a player comes out on the market or is going to be potentially traded, that they're going to be funneled to the Lakers because Clutch Sports has LeBron James and Anthony Davis. But he's saying, look,
it's happened about 8 times. So
right, it has happened before. There is a history of this. The Lakers have signed a bunch of. There was at one point where half the Lakers roster was Clutch Sports guys. There's reason for this, right? This isn't just some made up thing out of thin air that has no backing whatsoever. There's reason for this, but he said, look, we've got players on 26 teams in the NBA. That's now the size and the power of Clutch Sports. So he's saying, look, this is by no means he's only going to the Lakers situation, which to me, Keith, reading between the lines, and this is just my own, speculation here, but we had the report about a week ago that there was no trade market or is no trade market for Zach LaVine. Now you've got his agent coming out and saying, oh, no, we're not just going, we're open to all possibilities. To me, that says they're trying to create a trade market to Zach LaVine where perhaps there isn't much of one right now.
Completely agree. Yeah, this is hey, everybody else, he's not going to be unhappy if you trade for him. Like, this is we just want to get out of Chicago kind of thing. So, yeah, but it's, again, big salary. He's hurt right now. Teams are going to want to either see him play and feel good about that he's back, or be able to examine him themselves. And then bigger salary, got to wait for the trade market to open up a little bit more. Again, we're going to continue to get Zach LaVine news, and I put that in quotes for anybody only listening, where will be a thing for the next month and a half. I don't think we're going to see a Zach LaVine trade probably until we're at the tail end of January or the beginning part of February, ahead of the deadline.
Yeah, agreed. And that's not what the Bulls want. They want to move him sooner rather than later. But I think it's a contract that big. It takes a while for teams to feel comfortable, number one, trading for him, and number two, just believing that he's the piece they need. And a lot of teams aren't far enough along in their evaluation of where they're at this point in the season just yet. Another month, okay, then I think there's going to be some fire to the smoke, as it were.
I will say, interesting, unlike last year, when last year the trade market took a long time to develop because there were so many teams we're kind of there, right? We're kind of in it still. This year, there are some god-awful teams. The Spurs, the Pistons, the Wizards, the Trailblazers, the Jazz, the Hornets, maybe the Grizzlies eventually. The Hawks sound like they're open for business. There are some teams that are just bad. So I think we are going to have some real sellers, that's good news for the buyers, right? Because that means there's players to go get, and it doesn't mean there's like 2 players from one team to go target. Like, it's all right, we might have 6, 7, 8 teams that are real sellers right now because they're looking to either rebalance or shed salary, or just, hey, we're going a completely different direction. And that's good news for the buyers, not great news for the sellers, because you may not be commanding so much of the market on one player like you have in the past. Like, for example, if we got to beginning of February and Zach LaVine was like the only star on the market, which he may be the biggest star that hits the market. But if he's the only one, well, then the Bulls, the asking price can be very, very high. But if it's, all right, if we don't get Zach LaVine, we'll go get this guy instead, then the Bulls have to come down a little bit. So it's going to be really fun to watch that develop, because we're just in a very different spot than where we were a year ago. And teams are also basically saying, yeah, I'm not waiting for free agency anymore. Like, if we need to make a move, we're going to make a move now. That will open up the trade market a little bit too.
Speaking of the trade market, one team that we're looking at as a seller may not be a seller or not completely a seller. I can tell by the reaction on your face, Keith, that you think this is ridiculous. Pistons looking to add to their roster. They have lost 23 in a row. Why would they be a buyer on the trade market? I mean, unless you were, I mean, you could be a buyer in the sense that you're trading away a veteran player in order to add young players. And you could say we're a buyer looking for young talent. But in terms of like giving a picks or anything like that, that's typically how we think of a buyer, somebody who's willing to sacrifice future success in order to win now. It doesn't make sense at all. They're out of it. They're done. They're not going to make a playoff push or anything. Why would they be a buyer on the market right now?
Yeah, and let's put names to this because James Edwards of The Athletic did in two separate pieces, one at the end of last week and then one that I think came out, maybe it was this morning, or if not, it was last night. He said two names that they could be looking at are OG Anunoby. All right, to kind of get that one, maybe. And Tobias Harris.
Youngish.
The Tobias Harris one doesn't make any sense to me unless the idea is, hey, we're going to get some picks in Tobias Harris for Bogdanovich and Burks, and we're going to send those two guys to the Sixers. Okay, then I kind of get it because what you're really getting there is expiring salary and draft picks. I have no real issue with that. But if you're acquiring Tobias Harris as the Detroit Pistons, who are, to be clear, they're 2-24 with 23 straight losses. They're 3 off tying the single season consecutive loss record of 26 games. You shouldn't be going and adding guys that are like in their 30s that you maybe want to retain. It can get to a point with some of these teams where it is so bad, you have to go get some guys who can help you win a couple of games just so people don't say, I'll see you at the draft lottery, I'm out entirely, because that's where we're kind of headed with this Pistons team. But
you're talking about the players on the team right now?
The players, the fans, right? Like everybody's just kind of, it's bad vibes all around with this team. And they're not even like the Spurs where it's like, hey, at least we have Wembanyama and like 5 other young guys, because their young guys are all in weird spots, not always playing a lot. Monty Williams is very clearly still trying to get a handle on what he wants this team to be. And part of that is injury driven. Fully will own that. They've only had some guys back recently from injuries and the like, but yeah, it's just a complete mess. So I would not be looking to do anything. I would certainly not be in any spot where I'm giving up any kind of reasonable assets for any players to add to the roster. Not right now. If I'm making any deals, I'm making these deals with the idea of, all right, I'm adding to my asset base. It's not to go away. Because if I'm OG Anunoby and I'm Tobias Harris, I might look at it and be like, all right, cool, but you only got me for the next 4 or 5 months here,
and then I'm out.
Free agency.
Yeah, for sure. I 100%. Now they've got the Hawks tonight, the Jazz, and then 2 games against the Nets. I mean, it's not impossible for them to win one of those.
It's not
likely. It's not likely, but
yeah, I think if you're Pistons fans, it probably feels impossible at this point. Because the other thing is too, they're not just losing these games lately; they're getting killed in a lot of these games. Like they're getting drilled by 20 and 30 points. So that's a whole other thing versus you can't even be like, yeah, we got unlucky 15 times. Like you're truly awful. And that is, bad. So yeah, I don't give up assets. And that leads to, if this is ownership driven, that's one whole other issue. But if this is Troy Weaver's like vision and direction, I would start to question, do I really want him running my team through a trade deadline? Like, is that where I want to go? And this is not specific just to him. This is just a general philosophy I have, is if you feel like you may fire that guy over the summertime, do it now. Do it now and move on, because there's no reason to let them run a trade deadline. Because embattled GMs that are on a hot seat need to make a move, they'll make a bad move, is what more often than not happens. So, yeah, who knows?
That's true. Okay, well, Pistons in a tough spot for sure, and it's not been good for them. Obviously, 23 in a row. Now we're watching to see if they set a very bad record coming up in the next week or so.
If I was there, like, hey, if we're gonna be bad, at least let's get in the record book.
Well, but this isn't. I was thinking as we're talking through how bad they are. Like, this isn't even the year to be bad. Mm-hmm. It's not like there's that guy, there's that Wembanyama, right, that they're going to go get or something like that. And even then, the flattened odds kind of make that.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah. you're a year early for Cooper Flag. Like
Yep.
he's not even in this one. Yeah. I mean, the draft, I keep saying this, the draft does not look great right now. It's the middle of December. It'll look better when we get to June. It just will. It's how it always works in a bad draft, if you will. So, but yeah, there is not the guy that we're sitting here saying, well, yeah, I get it. Like be terrible and try to go get Wemby. Like we're just not there.
All right. Donovan Mitchell also commented on his future with the Cavs, which is has become a topic over the course of the season. You know, obviously with the injuries that the Cavs have just suffered, you lose Darius Garland, you lose Evan Mobley. Obviously, these are brutal, brutal injuries for the Cavs to suffer, and it's going to be really difficult for them, I think, to stay afloat. But so now that throws Donovan Mitchell and his future into question a bit. He does have a $33 million contract this season, $35.4 million next season. So it's not like he's expiring right now, but a player option the season after that. So this coming summer, we're getting to the point where he can kind of start directing his landing spot if he does want to trade or something. But he said he did a masterful job deflecting, saying that he just wants to focus on the Cavs right now and he's not thinking about the future. He may not be, but I'm sure there's a lot of other interested teams that are keeping a real close eye on what happens in Cleveland, what happens with Donovan Mitchell. Does he want to stay long term? Because if not, the sweepstakes could start as early as this year's trade deadline if he so chooses to kind of put that out there and make it known to Cleveland that he's ready to move on.
Yeah, so timelines have kind of come out a little bit more for Garland and Mobley that maybe we got that news live while we were doing our Front Office Friday show, which join us if you haven't yet. You'll have a lot of fun. We have a great time on those shows. But Garland's going to miss at least a month, Mobley 6 to 8 weeks. So there's no chance we're seeing Mobley. Probably not till after the trade deadline, just with that kind of a timeline, unless he's at the extreme front end of it. And then Garland's probably closer to, the end of January, beginning part of February. So if the Cavs, let's say they can't keep their heads above water, and they got to win the other night, which was good. But if they really fall apart here, maybe you do start to have the conversation of, all right, if Donovan Mitchell is giving us signs or maybe even flat out saying, look, I'm not re-signing here. And some people said, well, he already did. He wouldn't sign the extension this summer. It didn't make any sense for him to extend this early because he'd potentially be leaving money on the table. There's a lot of reasons guys don't extend. For example, De'Aaron Fox told the Kings the same thing, and nobody's up in arms about that. That's just, oh, we get it because there's money at stake. Sure. So it's the same thing for Mitchell. But if you're Team X and you're like, we feel pretty good that we can get him, and the Cavs are like, yeah, our season's done. Like we're just ready to start talking. Go get him now because then it'll help you the rest of this year. And then you already have him and you can really start to figure out, all right, how do we need to build a roster around him going forward? More importantly, how do we need to build a roster when he's maybe on a $50 to $60 million a year contract? Because that's probably where this is headed with Donovan Mitchell. You start to put all that data together. So that could open up the trade market. I kind of think it's probably more of a this summer thing, but I could see a world where if the next month or so for the Cleveland goes so bad, where they're like, hey, let's just get out in front of it. It's just a little hard a year and a half in to pull the trigger already on trading a guy you gave up most of your draft picks for down the line.
All right, so this will certainly be a situation to monitor with the Cavs and Donovan Mitchell. Is this something that ultimately comes to a head? Do we start to see some of the groundwork laid this year at the trade deadline that eventually starts to really pop up next summer? Do they go ahead and make a move now? It'll be another player, in addition to Zach LaVine, in addition to many others that'll be out there on the trade market before February 8th, but certainly a big one to keep an eye on. Let's jump over to this. We talked about this last week. The Grizzlies were going to have to make a roster move in order to bring back Ja Morant, and they've decided to waive Kenneth Lofton Jr. Maybe not a surprise given how much Bismack Biyombo has been in their rotation and has meant to the team that even though he was the latest addition, that Kenneth Lofton would be the guy that ultimately gets the axe here.
Yeah, there is not an easy cut for the Grizzlies to make from their roster. They don't have anybody who's just kind of there, right? That's the challenge. And it was funny. I saw some response. Why not? And they named two-way guys. Well, that doesn't change. That doesn't solve the problem. They need to
Right.
get down to 15 players. John Morant, one more game tonight is the last game that he is out on his 25-game suspension. So this will have to happen tomorrow. So very likely Kenneth Lofton Jr. is in his last little bit here with the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, we talked earlier in the show, yes, he is Mac McClung, a 4A guy. That's kind of what Lofton feels like. He's a guy who dominates in the G League. Plays really well for the hustle and has done a lot of good stuff. But then he gets into the big level at the NBA, and the game's just a little too fast for him. He's a little undersized for what he is. So, maybe he can figure stuff out. If he's going to make it in the NBA, he has to add range to his jumper. He needs to be able to make 3-pointers. That would give him much more of a chance to continue to play. But for now, probably get waived. Maybe a team claims him and says, hey, we have some minutes that we can give him and kind of figure it out from there. But I think probably more like it'll pass through waivers, probably return to Memphis and return into their system. And then they'll monitor things as it goes from there the rest of the way. But they had to make a move. So here we are. It's going to be John Morant coming back and likely Kenneth Lofton Jr. Going out. This was DeMichael Cole of the Memphis Commercial Appeal had this over the weekend.
All right. And then the Suns, the big three, no longer. Well, once again, Bradley Beal is out. The Suns just can't seem to get healthy. I mean, we knew this was going to be a problem going into the season, that having all three of Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal healthy at the same time would not be easy. But now the Suns are going to be missing Bradley Beal for another few weeks, and they've not been living up to expectations so far. They lost to the Knicks when Jalen Brunson went off. They've kind of look. The West is difficult, but still the Suns are floating a little bit lower than I think most of us expected them to.
Yeah, they're 10th right now, 14-12. In the last spot in the play, and they're a couple games ahead of the Warriors. So two teams definitely underachieving a little bit there in the West. And we said there were three things with the Suns, right? It was either going to be, can they make it work without a real point guard? Can they find depth? And are these guys going to stay healthy long enough? Well, so far, Booker's making it work without the point guard. The depth has been pretty solid. It's just the challenge is they're without, Bradley Beal, and their defense isn't very good. That's the other challenge. And that one I don't see happening. I don't know how good it needs to be. If they can win 1 million or score 1 million points and win games, that'll probably be fine. But yeah, without Beal again, that's going to be really tricky for them to kind of figure out here over the next few weeks. And I just worry Kevin Durant's been the only one who's kind of been there. Booker missed only a little bit of time, but you put this much on Kevin Durant. History tells us over the last few years, there's an injury coming with him at some point. He's going to miss time. And then if that turns into he misses time, then where are we at? Because that puts a lot on Booker with the, decent role players, but he's got to carry. So I'm very curious to continue to watch how the Suns, play through this. Obviously, it can beat anybody on any given night because their scoring can go bananas on you. But for now, they're just kind of a slightly above average team.
Yeah, that's what they've been. Their point differential says that as well. Yep. Right now, I mean, interesting in the Western Conference, it's 10th is the Phoenix Suns, 11th is the Golden State Warriors. Again, we still have a lot of basketball left to play, but certainly not what we would have predicted coming into this season.
And both are behind the Houston Rockets, which we
right. Yeah, that's the other piece of that. Both are behind the Houston Rockets, with the Wolves at the number 1 seed and the Oklahoma City Thunder sitting at number 2. I did a couple of Knicks shows over the weekend, Keith, and just previewing Lakers and Knicks, which is taking place tonight. And they were talking about the West and how difficult it is and how many, teams are right there. And there's some surprises around the league and everything. And I think we're getting closer and closer, just looking at the way the standings sit, to what the NBA really wants in terms of parity, to not being able to just say, oh, this team is going to dominate all season long and it's a foregone conclusion and all of that. And you look at the Western Conference right now, the Rockets are surprising people. The Suns and the Warriors are underwhelming. You've got the Mavs are in the 3 seed, the Thunder are in the 2 seed. It's not quite to the level of, say, like football, but still, this is essentially the parity that the NBA has been pushing towards.
Yeah, maybe we'll do like post Christmas. We'll sit down and really kind of go through like who do we feel really are real contenders here. That'd probably be a good time to have that conversation and really get into it. Like who we feeling good, and then maybe we'll do it again like a month or two later and see how it's
Sure.
changed. Like, are we feeling better about a team, worse about a team, and those kind of things? Because that can always be a lot of fun.
Okay, let's jump to our old friend DeMarcus Cousins signs in Taiwan. Now it's just a 10-day deal, 4 games. I wonder what does he get paid for 4 games
I don't know.
in Taiwan. I don't know what that is because that didn't get released, but he is signing it in
Money
Taiwan.
is good over there. I will say that. The 2 places where the money is actually pretty good that I don't know if a lot of people would know, Taiwan and Japan. Guys get actually paid fairly well, and they get to live fairly, comfortable lifestyle. So that is Japan, especially, is a place where a lot of guys, American-born players, have gone to recently, and they kind of like playing there, and then just they stay and they don't bother chasing other jobs, other places because they like the lifestyle. So we'll see, with this one. But yeah, I don't know what the money is like, but we saw Dwight Howard went there and put up big numbers. I think Cousins probably will as well. He played in Puerto Rico last year, but it was really their season's different. Their season kind of starts when the NBA playoffs start. So he was played springtime and the beginning part of the summer and really dominated as you kind of expect. I didn't fully realize he's 33, so it's not like he's like 36 or 37 and trying to hang in like Dwight Howard was. So maybe he shows something here in Taiwan in this little call up, and maybe a team says, all right, we could do worse than Boogie for minimum big for the rest of the season.
I did see a lot of the response in social media is that he should be on an NBA team right now. And there are people that think he can still be the DeMarcus Cousins of old. I don't think I'd go that far with it, but we'll see if he can prove himself in Tijuana. Maybe grab some attention that he wouldn't have gotten otherwise. But anyway, it was just a 10-day deal, so it'll be a quick trip for him for now, unless it turns into something longer. But we'll see.
Which it could too, right? This is probably a trial of like, what does he look like here? How does he feel about it? And then if there's no NBA interest, sign on and hang on for the last little bit here their season or what. I don't know exactly what their season runs through. I should probably look that up, but yeah, my guess is this is both sides try it out, and maybe he's hoping, let me show that I can really still dominate and play, and maybe a team will say, hey, we can bring you in on a minimum deal, maybe gets a 10-day with the NBA team on the call up there on a 10-day call up, or if the team needs an extra big. So there's always a chance. We'll see. His biggest problem when he last played in the league 2 years ago, he just couldn't move anymore on defense. So he really had a hard time on that end of the floor.
All right, let's jump over to Isaiah Stewart. It's a player that is drawing some interest, but the Celtics, the Thunder, the Mavs, Keith, as you know, though, you've been answering questions about him for just a little while here. The challenge is the whole poison pill situation with his contract. It's going to be very difficult for a team to actually trade for him.
Yeah. So what happens with these guys who are in the last year of the rookie scale deal when they sign an extension, which several members of this draft class did, Stewart included, what ends up happening is their money is imbalanced in a trade. And the idea for that is they don't really want teams extending guys and then turning around and trading them. They want it to be, hey, you extended them because you want them. You want to keep them. So in Isaiah Stewart's case, he makes about $5.2 million this season. So that's his number on the Pistons side of a trade. That's the number that would be heading out from them that they would be able to match salary against. For a team coming in, it's the average of this year plus all the years on his extension. So what happens in this case is he makes $15 million a year over 4 years on his extension. So that ends up an average of about $13 million or so. That his contract bumps up to. So that makes it very, very hard. For example, the Celtics, the only way they could really match salary for him would be to pile together a whole bunch of their minimum contracts or to part with the rotation player right now. So for Boston specifically, the Thunder and the Mavs, they have other ways they could maybe get there. Boston's part of this specifically. This might be one of those where we talked about it already. You're kind of laying the groundwork for, hey, what would it take? And then maybe you regroup over the summertime. to have a conversation. And once July 1st comes around and he's on his new contract, his number changes to the $15 million salary he'll be on. So, but right now that imbalance with that poison pill provision, that makes it really, really hard to match salary for any of these guys. And this is true of any of them that are in this situation that signed a rookie scale extension. And it only applies to rookie scale extension guys.
Well, maybe the Pistons will use him to be a buyer on the market. They'll trade him for Tobias Harris, and I'll think that makes all the sense, doesn't it, Keith?
Yeah, that'd be a real smart move.
Oh man. Okay. Well, gosh, I hate to get to this one actually. Chance Comanche arrested. This is about as bad as it gets. I mean, this is a murder charge here. This is a G League player, I believe. Keith, I'll be honest, I'm not super familiar with Chance Comanche.
Yeah,
you said
so
he played.
Talk it, if you want. So he played in the G League the last couple of years. He's also played overseas. He went to Arizona. If people are college fans, you may recognize him from there. He's a center. He's about 6'10", 6'11". He did get a one-game call-up with the Trailblazers at the very end of last season. He appeared in their last game of the year. He had been playing for the Stockton Kings, which is the Kings G League affiliate. He had actually played a game in Henderson, Nevada, which is where the G League Ignite play out of. He was there for a game, and then apparently that night went with his girlfriend and met up with another young woman. Then that young woman disappeared. This was about a few weeks ago when this all went down. Then he returned back to the Stockton Kings after this all allegedly happened, played in another game or two at least, but played in Portland in a game against the Rip City Remix. And then on Friday, the Stockton Kings waived him because it was put out there that he was being arrested. He was arrested by FBI agents. He was arrested in California. They were waiting, at least as of last night, they were waiting to extradite him to Nevada. Unfortunately, very sadly, they found remains that turned out to be this other young lady that she was killed and murdered by somebody. They found her remains in the desert, and Chance Comanche and the woman who's been reported to be his girlfriend are both now being considered subjects in kidnapping and murder case here. So very, just crazy story. Extremely unfortunate that somebody lost their life over all this, and we'll see. But for now, clearly he's well out of the range of anybody in the NBA carrying, and he's off the G League roster and everything else. And probably we're not going to hear from him again, would be my guess at any point. As far as his basketball playing future goes.
Yeah, pending the trial and once they figure out everything that actually happened and everything. Yeah, I mean, this is not good. Obviously, this is terrible, and the whole situation is definitely a mess. So hopefully there will be more information coming out about this at some point, and then we'll see. Again, like I said, have to imagine this is all going to go to trial, and yeah, I mean, if it is what it looks like, then that's the end of him as a basketball player.
Yep, and probably productive member of society. Honestly,
absolutely.
Go off to prison for quite some time.
All right. Maybe not the story we wanted to lead into this with, but Daryl Morey got an extension with the 76ers.
Yeah. This happened Friday. Right? Might have happened while we were on the live show, but I think it happened right after the live show. So, yeah, I mean, good for Daryl Morey. It sounds like this extension ties him with Nick Nurse, where the two of them contracts will run now concurrent to each other. So we'll see there. Clearly, Nurse was Morey's hire there to run the team. Doc Rivers was in place before Morey got there. So now the two of them are tied together and they're playing really well. I mean, they are. It's funny. I've seen a lot of people be like, they've played such a soft schedule, but they're destroying the teams they're playing. Joel Embiid 8 times already this year hasn't played in the fourth quarter because the team's been up by so much. He has more points scored than he has minutes played this year. Embiid does.
Oh, I saw that. That's insane.
That's insane. Yeah, because we're not talking about a guy who's played 10 minutes and scored 12 points. Like it's like 700 something to 700 something. So that's also crazy. They are just absolutely destroying teams right now. So, Morey came out of the Harden mess. albeit a mess he kind of created, but he came out of it looking pretty good right now. Get a lot of trade assets. They're obviously the team everyone's going to have their eyes on going into the trade deadline because it seems like they are positioned to do something to add to what is a very, very good Philadelphia team.
Yeah, there was talk around the league. I'm not talking about like significant talk from the 76ers side or anything, but just talk from a lot of fans and people who were debating, like, would it make more sense to move on from Daryl Morey than to move on from James Harden? And again, I don't think that was ever really like a serious thing, but I mean, that's where the conversation was over the summer when it was looking like they were going to get, pennies on the dollar for James Harden. And I think they still kind of did. But it's the team's winning. They're playing well. Things are kind of working out for them. And so this is what happens when you have success, then extensions are handed out. People get paid. It's the way that it goes. So here's Daryl Morey getting an extension with the 76ers, and they'll get to see this thing through. Thank goodness for Tyrese Maxey. In addition to Joel Embiid, of course, but
sure.
Tyrese Maxey, his ascension this year has really changed the fortunes of the 76ers from what we were predicting in the summer. And it's turned them into one of the big successes of the season so far. So, and potentially a team to keep an eye on as a buyer at the trade deadline as well.
Yeah, big time. They're getting a lot of production out of their role players too, who are playing quite well. So they're doing good. And as far as the Harden trade goes, Trevor, I'm starting to believe in the Clippers, man. 7 straight wins. They're playing some really good basketball. So I don't want to do it again. I just don't want to go down this road with this team because I know, but I think I'm ready to get hurt again.
You're ready to get hurt again.
Here we go with the Clippers. So we'll see. I mean, we might be talking about this one as one of the big time win-win trades, of the last couple years, pending what Philly does. And I mean, Philly already kind of won the trade because they just eliminated the distraction, and all those guys, Morrison, Covington, and Batum, they're playing really well for Philly. Yeah. Those are 3 rotation players right now for the Sixers that they filled 3 rotation slots by moving on from James Harden, which is that alone is a win. Never mind the draft picks and what they may turn some of those guys into later. So win-win trade right now because Harden's playing well, and so are the Clippers.
Maybe a topic for tomorrow. Does your opinion of the Gobert trade change now that the Wolves are playing well? But that's something we can get into on tomorrow's show. We've gone on long enough for today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Make sure you do subscribe right here to the NBA Front Office Show on YouTube. And, of course, don't forget to go find us over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is you listen to podcasts. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.